lot about him, especially if you have a guy like Coach Cal who trusts you as a freshman in those spots. So, sixth man of the year, I'm going to go with Naz Reid with the Minnesota Timberwolves. For one, I think losing Towns, and you saw last year the rotations that they would have with Reid to kind of make up for Gobert's lack of, offensive game, to put it lightly, I suppose.
Creativity.
But then you got, Julius Randle obviously coming in as well. And I can see the Reid and Randle combo doing some damage together, kind of both, undersized big men, but in today's NBA, perfect size. Naz Reid also is a very good outside shooter. You can kind of play him everywhere as a stretch five, or have him go to the four, regardless. He's a very good offensive player, very good rebounder. He gives Minnesota a spark that we saw it last year. I mean, the reason why they were able to kind of get over the hump in the playoffs and make that deep run was because Naz Reid did give him a lot off the bench offensively when Rudy Gobert, obviously, was struggling to produce. So I think he's going to be a very, I think he's a good pick for sixth man of the year. That's why I'm going with him.
No, I agree with that. I really like that pick. One thing about Julius Randle, right? If I may go on a quick tangent. Let's make sure that you know your role on Minnesota. Don't do things that are not Minnesota's system. Like last night, I saw the ball getting sticky on sticky with this guy, and he's becoming the Marcus Morris of the NBA. So, you got to, find a way to get guys, drive and kick, move the ball. You have to. There's so much talent on that roster that if you allow the ball to become sticky, guess what? You're going to be back where you were when your career started. You're going to be pulling up jumpers and missing jumpers and, trying to rebound. Yeah, I mean, you can relate with the Lakers, but, it's just crazy to me. When I was watching that game, I'm like, have you not learned your lesson? There are teams that don't want you because you do that type of shit. And if you find a way to move the ball around, if you find a way to build some type of post presence, guess what? You'll get the ball more and pick and roll too. I mean, you think Anthony Edwards doesn't like pick and roll? He loves pick and roll with Gobert. Why not run, pick and pop or pick and post? Find a way to get moving off the ball as well. Because, man, oh, man, does that guy just sit around the perimeter? He waits for the ball to get in his hands, and guess what? You're not getting the ball back. So good luck. Yeah. You saw it all last night in the second half. It's just relevant. It's sad. For me, it's Malik Monk with the Kings. I really think that the Kings have a special guy in this man where he can be Lou Williams-esque coming off the bench. He's scoring bunches. He can post 20, 25 points a game. He does a lot of little things too. I think everybody looks at him as just a scorer, but he does find a way defensively to, get into it a little bit, but rebounding the ball, assist numbers are really there. So I think highly that system with Mike Brown's going to allow him to thrive, continuing to thrive, I should say. And they got Murray coming off a rookie year too, or a second year. So they're going to find a way to, utilize Malik Monk a little bit more, from a shooting guard standpoint and have, Murray play the three more. So.
Yeah, and the other thing too, he was a running mate with De'Aaron Fox. They obviously played together the last 2 years, but they also played together at Kentucky. The chemistry is obviously really evident there. And anytime you can get a guy like that, with your superstar and Fox, that the Kings have. I mean, yeah, when the Kings run 2 years ago with the whole light the beam and everything, I mean, that was Monk was a huge part of it. And obviously they're a fun team to watch. Once again, not a team that gets on prime time a lot, but
and shout out to Devin Carter.
Oh yeah, that's right. Is he I think he's banged up though, right? To start the year,
a little bit. Yeah,
he'll be all right. Yeah, that's he's definitely going to give them for a team that wants to get up and down, and they don't have a lot of defensive minded guys. That's going to be where Devin Carter's role comes in for sure. Elite defender, as we saw at the college level with Devin Carter. So most improved player, I'm going to keep it in the West. I'm going to go with Jalen Green. With the Houston Rockets. So towards the end of last year, the last 20 games of the season, he was averaging over 24 points per game and was top 15 in efficiency ranking. So he was coming on late. Once again, I talked about earlier, I think that team's going to be a lot better just because they are so young. Obviously himself, Jabari Smith, Sengun. Reed Shepard, as we talked about. I expect them to take a step forward as a team. I think they're going to be a team that sneaky, play-in game or playoff team maybe in the Western Conference, and he's going to be a big part of it. So I like Jalen Green to be continue his run at the end of last season and continue to take those steps forward. Obviously, he's a great athlete, but he was getting better as a shooter, as we saw last season as well. So I like Jalen Green for my pick there.
Yeah, I think Jalen Green just has to mature more with the game of basketball and with that Houston system because he has all the talent in the world to be a special player. But he could also go down the route of Malik Monk, right? Where you do find a way to fit with a really good playoff team. But the Houston Rockets have to find a way to utilize him more in that system. They do have a lot of people that like to not share the ball. Fred VanVleet, for example. So they have to find a way to get him more involved. A guy for me is Jalen Johnson. Jalen Johnson for the Hawks. I think he's going to take a huge step forward. He could have a Jaylen Brown type of moment where he becomes the second guy in Atlanta. I think Trae Young obviously has the keys for now until that changes. But I think Jalen Johnson, you saw it last year. He can find a way to create his own shot. He really has like a Brandon Ingram type of game, type of mindset, where he can post on the block, he can post at the elbow, he can find a way to create his own the spin moves, with the left-handed finish. Like he is a guy that you can absolutely rely on around the perimeter as well. He shot around 35% from three, so he's definitely Jalen Johnson, Jaylen Brown-esque. So I'm going with Jalen Johnson, for most improved player of the year.
So I think we're going with our finals picks next, right?
We are.
Lastly, so as much as it pains me to say this wearing this hat, I do think the Boston Celtics are going to repeat. Once again, not really going on much of a limb there. I have them beating the Phoenix Suns.
Wow.
In the NBA Finals. So the Suns' biggest issue, as we saw last year, other than obviously health and getting that whole team healthy at once, was they didn't really have a point guard. And they forced Booker into that role and Beal into that role, and obviously neither really fit that role. They had some depth issues as well. So what do they do this offseason? Under the radar, not the sexiest signings, but Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, I think solidify that you have, kind of a veteran presence at the point guard position that's very steady. Guys that will not be, forcing shots or turning the ball over. They're just steady-handed veteran point guards. Tyus Jones especially, I think, was going to really fit nicely with the rest of that lineup.
Sneaky pick.
Monte Morris can push it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then you got, they bring in, Plumlee. They have Nurkic. So at the big man, you also got guys that know their role. I mean, they're to muck it up, rebound the ball, kick it back out, reset, because you have three lethal perimeter scorers, guys that can get their bucket anytime they want. I think the fact that as long as they're healthy, and obviously health plays a factor regardless of who makes a run, I think that core is going to gel more. I also don't think Kevin Durant has many years left where he's going to be one of those elite players, and maybe even saying he's still one of the elite guys in the league. Some people might not buy into that. I still do. He's one of the most talented scorers the game has ever seen. And I think he's got one more push in him to make a run. Obviously, I don't have them beating the Celtics, but in terms of offensive firepower, the Suns can give Boston probably certainly. I think they can give them a series. We saw last year Dallas just failed to. They didn't have the horses, especially when you consider Kyrie shriveled up into a whatever you want to call it. Especially those games in Boston, but I like Phoenix and what's a difficult Western Conference to kind of predict.
Yeah, and I think Mike Budenholzer added to the mix. The fact that he has the championship caliber, obviously winning with the Milwaukee Bucks, helps tremendously. I think Frank Vogel was a waste. I really think that he did not do well with, the players the highly talented players that he had on the court. Like, let's talk what it is. Like, Devin Booker, when he's on, guess what? He's one of the best clutch shooters of all time. When Kevin Durant is on, he's a lethal shooter. He's a lethal scorer. I think it's just bringing the defensive mindset. And I think Budenholzer will try to develop that. I do think that they'll find a way to get deep in the playoffs. I just don't think they'll get to the finals. But I do have the Boston Celtics winning banner 19 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think the Thunder, the fact that they have that playoff experience, from last year and the belief in the system, I really think that, as mentioned, we talked about in this whole podcast, it's Thunder oriented, Thunder esque, but they don't find a way to win that championship just yet. I think that there is a beast in the East, and that is the Celtics. And until anybody proves them wrong, until anybody shows fight against their shooting aspects and their ball movement and their defense, they got to find a way to match that. And until some team comes out of the works and finds a way to match it, I can't see the Celtics losing at any point anytime soon. So with that being said, we got the Celtics winning Banner 19, baby. And I know you're so
Yeah,
happy, you being a Lakers fan. So how do you feel about that?
yeah. I mean, like I said, I hate to say it, but you watch the games, and I would have zero credibility as anything in sports if I didn't think that the Boston Celtics were very capable of at least getting back to the finals. And I mean, there's just too many question marks for everybody else. With Boston, they're returning a core that obviously looked a little PO'd last night too, with the whole USA basketball angle. We didn't,
Thank you, Steve Kerr.
There's a lot, yeah.
And Grant Hill.
There's a lot there to you can dive into as well. But listen, they were 31-7 without Porzingis last year, and then in the postseason they pretty much won the title without him anyway.
Without him, yeah.
So if they get him back healthy for that playoff run, which I thought they were last year, they ended up needing. But that's just another piece. And then even if they lose guys, I think there's, if White or Holiday go down, I think there's enough confidence with that roster where they think like, hey, we got Peyton Pritchard, who's been here and knows the system, and obviously very different players, but a guy that they probably believe in to get it done, and he probably can. It's just they've built a really nice roster. Like you talked about, the ball rotation, the shooting, the defense, and it starts with Tatum and Brown. Holiday was a great addition. I mean, the Milwaukee Bucks, for everyone like talking about them up in the offseason, they gave the Celtics a gift.
Yes, they did.
In Drew Holiday. So,
yes. Sometimes luck happens, especially when you wear green. But knock on wood, it's durability for the Celtics. If they can stay healthy, with all their core guys, and I think what's as important, like, yes, Porzingis is out, but I think it's important to keep Derek White and Drew Holiday as well healthy, because those two guys, they won some big time games for us, last year. Drew Holiday, big time game against Indiana, the steal at the end of that game. Derek White, obviously, they didn't win in 2022, but he had the tip in, the hustle plays against Miami Heat. So I think that all comes full circle, and you got to put a statue of Brad Stevens in Boston. If this continues, I mean, we talk about Danny Ainge, what he pulled off in, with the big three, which is fantastic. But I think it's just as impressive what Brad did, because when you look at the players that he acquired, they weren't big names. Guess what? They were guys that fit the system, fit the pieces that were missing to that championship puzzle. And so I really think moving forward that Brad Stevens deserves a statue right outside of the TD Garden. So, but knock on wood, all that being said, durability is number one. And speaking of number one, underdog, okay? We talk about underdog all the time, but it's not all about football. You can go, make projections on the World Series. You can make projections on tonight's NBA game. So let's get on it. Let's play. Download the app. Have some fun. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Ticket.
All right.